I caught Karen red-handed on my security feed, bolt cutters gleaming as she barked. Cut the lock. He's hiding something. And my jaw hit the floor harder than a linebacker at a Super Bowl fumble. I was in my backyard in Raleigh, North Carolina, sweating through a Tuesday night in June 2025, showing two wide-eyed security trainees, Jake and Emily, how to sweep a room without looking like they just stumbled out of a frat party. It was 8:47 p.m., the air thick with humidity and the faint buzz of cicadas, when my phone lit up like a 4th of July finale. I've got cameras everywhere, front porch, back door, even the dog kennel, because after 12 years training cops and private security, you don't mess around with porch pirates or nosy neighbors. But this was no package thief. This was a full-on HOA horror show starring Karen, the clipboard queen of Pinewood Estates. Before I continue the story, write a comment below. Where are you watching from? Like if you want to constantly win in any conflicts. I tapped the alert, expecting maybe a raccoon knocking over my trash cans again, but instead, there she was, Karen in the flesh, her khaki vest emblazoned with neighborhood safety enforcer like she'd raided a discount store's clearance rack. She was creeping through my living room with a flashlight, her posse trailing behind her like rejects from a community theater spy flick. There was Mike, her lanky son with a walkie-talkie clipped to his cargo shorts, and Susan, a jittery woman in a sunhat who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. My stomach didn't just drop. It did a triple backflip into a pit of pure, unfiltered what the hell is happening? I wasn't scared, not yet. I was too busy processing the sheer absurdity of it. Karen, the woman who'd once fined me $25 for a non-compliant mailbox height, had just broken into my house like she was auditioning for CSI, Suburbia. Let me rewind a bit, because this didn't come out of nowhere. I'm Ethan. Nice to meet you, by the way. I spent over a decade teaching law enforcement how to handle real threats, then cashed out to semi-retire at 38 in this quiet little cul-de-sac. Pinewood's your typical American dream spot. White picket fences, kids on scooters, and HOA newsletters obsessed with grass length. I bought my place on Maple Drive 3 years ago, figuring I'd train my German Shepherd, Max, grill some burgers, and live low-key. Most folks here are solid, wave hello, mind their business. Except Karen. She rolled in his HOA chair last year like a dictator in yoga pants, armed with a whistle and a laminated badge she probably made at Staples. She's the type who'd call a stray leaf a public safety hazard and mean it. Her latest obsession? The Community Watch Task Force. She'd been ranting at meetings about rising crime, like the time someone left a bike unchained overnight. To her, that was Gotham-level chaos. So she recruited her little squad, handed out Velcro name tags, and started patrolling like she was the sheriff of a town with a population of 47 lawns. I kept my head down, running my training sessions out back, nothing loud, just drills with flashlights and some old vests. Legal, quiet, my business. But to Karen, my blackout curtains and locked sheds screamed suspicious activity. She'd squint at me over her coffee mug at block parties and mutter, "We're watching you, Ethan." I'd just smile and sip my beer, thinking she'd tire herself out. Spoiler, she didn't. 2 weeks back, she taped a voluntary safety inspection, notice to my door, voluntary in giant air quotes. It said her task force could escalate if I refused, which I did, because I'm not letting some wannabe mall cop poke around my house. I crumpled it, tossed it, figured that was that. Then last night, I'd caught her and Mike measuring my driveway with a tape measure at dusk. Just checking setbacks, she'd chirped when I stormed out, her grin all teeth and no soul. I told her to get off my property. She pretended I was speaking Martian. And now, here she was, live on my feed, turning my living room into her personal episode of Unsolved Mysteries. My trainees froze mid-drill as I stared at the screen, my pulse kicking up a notch not from fear, but from the slow burn of "Are you kidding me?" Jake, all 22 years of him, peeked over my shoulder and whistled. "Dude, is that lady breaking in?" Emily, sharper than a tack, smirked. "That's no lady, that's a Karen." I didn't laugh. I was already calculating. 12 minutes to my truck, 8 more to the house if I floored it. Could I catch them? Were they dumb enough to still be there? Mike might have snagged one of my old tasers from a shelf. He's the type to think it's a toy. I dismissed Jake and Emily with a clipped, "Training's done." Real-world lesson just popped up and bolted for my keys. As I peeled out, tires squealing on asphalt, my brain was a blender of fury and disbelief. Karen didn't just cross a line. She pole-vaulted over it with a megaphone and a spotlight. I hit the silent alarm app, cops would roll soon, and dialed 911, keeping it vague, Trespassers in my home, 142, Maple Drive. I didn't say who I was yet. Let her dig her own grave. The night air whipped through my open window as I sped past familiar streets, porch lights flickering like they knew drama was brewing. This wasn't just a break-in. This was personal. And Karen had no idea who she'd just ticked off. I screeched into my driveway at 142, Maple Drive, heart pounding like a bass line at a Metallica concert, just as the first red and blue lights flickered in my rearview. 8 minutes flat from the training lot. Call it a personal best. I'd floored it through Raleigh's back roads, weaving past minivans and dog walkers, the whole time picturing Karen rifling through my stuff like she was Indiana Jones on a budget. My phone was still buzzing with camera alerts, motion in the kitchen now. Were they seriously still inside? I killed the engine, grabbed my flashlight, and slipped around back through the cedar fence, quiet as a shadow. No sirens yet. The cops were playing it subtle, and I wanted in before they spooked her. Inside, it was chaos meets comedy. I crept through the garage, cracked the door to the house, and there they were, Karen and her crew arguing in my kitchen like it was a homeowners meeting gone rogue. Mike was waving a pair of pliers he'd snagged from my toolbox, whining, "Mom, this shed lock's rusted. I can't get it." Susan clutched a clipboard, muttering, "We shouldn't be here. Karen, this feels wrong." And Karen? She stood by my fridge, flashlight beam bouncing off my stainless steel like she was directing a heist movie, barking, "Check the cabinets. Suspicious types always hide stuff." Suspicious types? Lady, the most dangerous thing in there was a half-empty jar of expired mayo. Across town, Officer Travis Miller, my old trainee from the Raleigh PD, was clocking out at the precinct when the 911 call crackled over the radio. "Trespassers at 142 Maple," dispatch said. He froze, coffee cup halfway to his mouth, then grinned like a kid on Christmas. "Wait, that's Ethan's place," he told his partner, Sarah, who was already grabbing her keys. "If this is who I think it is, we're in for a show." They flipped on the cruiser lights and rolled out, Travis chuckling about the time I'd made him run laps for botching a door breach. He had no idea he was about to walk into the Carimpocalypse. Back at my house, I flipped the breaker, lights out. The kitchen went pitch black, and they shrieked like they'd seen a ghost. Mike dropped the pliers with a clatter. Susan yelped, "I told you this was bad." I stepped in, voice low and steady, like I was running a drill. "You're trespassing. Drop everything, get out, and hit the ground, now." Karen spun around, flashlight blinding me for a split second, and screeched, "We're authorized personnel. You can't intimidate us." Authorized by who? The ghost of HOA past? I didn't flinch. Mike, bless his clueless heart, lunged for the hallway. Big mistake. I hit the strobe switch I'd rigged for training, and he slammed into the wall like a cartoon coyote, crumpling with a groan. The others bolted for the door, but I was faster, flashlight in their faces, pinning them like deer in headlights. "Down," I said one by one. Susan dropped like a sack of potatoes, whimpering. Mike moaned from the floor. "I think I broke my nose." Karen stood there, chest puffed out, clutching her clipboard like it was a shield. "I know my rights," she snapped, jabbing a finger at me. "And you just violated most of them." I shot back, calm as ice. Her eyes flickered, first crack in her armor. Then headlights swept the driveway. The cavalry had arrived. Travis stepped out of the cruiser, Sarah behind him, both scanning the scene like they'd walked onto a sitcom set. I met them at the door, handed over my ID, and played the footage on my phone. Karen's greatest hits, starring Cut the Lock, and Mike's wall-smashing cameo. Travis snorted, barely holding it together. "You trained me. Man, this her idea of a takedown?" Sarah smirked, eyeing Karen, who was pacing by my couch, still clutching that clipboard like it'd save her soul. "Ma'am," Travis said, voice all business now. "You want to explain why you're in this man's house with tools and no warrant?" Karen launched into her defense like a politician caught in a scandal. "Officer, we're investigating suspicious activity. He's got drills in his yard, lock sheds. He's a threat to Pinewood." Travis raised an eyebrow, glanced at me. "You give her permission, Ethan?" I shook my head, slow and deliberate. "Nope." The silence was golden. Karen's face went from smug to sour milk in 2.3 seconds. Sarah pulled out her notepad, muttering, "This is going to be a long night." While Travis questioned her, I replayed the footage in my head, every frame a nail in her HOA coffin. This wasn't just a break-in. It was a power trip gone nuclear. My house smelled like Susan's floral perfume and Mike's desperation, and I could feel my blood simmering. Karen didn't just invade my space. She turned my quiet life into her personal playground. But here's the thing. I don't play games I don't win. As the cops separated her crew, Mike whining, Susan sniffling, I leaned against the counter, watching her empire of Velcro patches unravel. She had no clue the storm she'd just kicked up. Karen's voice bounced off my kitchen walls like a bad echo, insisting to Travis, "This is a wellness check. HOA sanctioned." While I stood there, arms crossed, watching her dig a hole so deep she'd need a ladder to climb out. It was 9:12 p.m., and my living room looked like a crime scene crossed with a PDA meeting gone feral. Mike sprawled on the floor, clutching his nose, Susan sniffling on my couch, and Karen waving her clipboard like it was the Constitution. Travis, bless him, didn't even blink. "Wellness checks don't involve pliers, ma'am," he said, nodding at the tool Mike had dropped. Sarah was already on the radio, calling for backup, her voice crackling through the night as Pinewood Estates woke up to the circus on Maple Drive. Across the street, old Mrs. Harper, 70 years young and nosier than a tabloid, was peering through her blinds with a glass of Chardonnay in hand. She'd texted the neighborhood group chat 5 minutes ago. "Cop said Ethan's. Karen's involved. Grab popcorn." By now, half the block was buzzing, phones pinging, porch lights flipping on, folks stepping out in slippers to gawk. Mr. Jenkins, the retired accountant next door, leaned over his fence, muttering, "About damn time someone shut her up." I caught his eye through the window and gave a half shrug. He grinned like I'd just won the lottery. Back inside, I handed Travis my phone, full footage, unedited, with Karen's Oscar-worthy "cut the lock" line on repeat. He watched, lips twitching, then turned to her. "So you're saying this is fake?" Karen sputtered, her face turning the color of a sunburned tomato. It's manipulated. He's framing me." I snorted. "Framing her? Lady, I didn't have time to Photoshop her into my life. I was too busy living it." Travis folded his arms. "Ma'am, you broke in. No warrant, no consent, no emergency. That's not a check. That's a felony." Her clipboard trembled. Susan let out a tiny sob. Mike groaned. "Mom, just stop." Meanwhile, at the Raleigh PD station, my buddy Nate, a detective I'd trained back in 2018, was pulling up HOA records after Travis texted him the rundown. "Ethan's got a Karen situation," the message read. Nate laughed so hard he nearly spilled his coffee, then started digging. "Let's see how deep this rabbit hole goes," he told his desk partner, Lisa, who was already Googling Pinewood's bylaws. They found Karen's task force manifesto, 3 pages of nonsense about protecting property values, with zero legal backing. Nate whistled. "She's toast." Back at my place, the second cruiser rolled up, tires crunching gravel, and 2 more officers, Rodriguez and Kim, stepped out. Rodriguez recognized me instantly from a tactical seminar I'd run last year. "Ethan, you good?" he asked, eyeing Karen's crew like they were a bad comedy troupe. "Better now?" I said, jerking a thumb at the chaos. Kim hauled Mike up, checking his nose. No break, just bruised pride, while Rodriguez took Susan outside for her statement. Karen stayed put, still yapping about her authority, until Travis cut her off. "You're done talking till we sort this. Sit." I watched it unfold, my pulse still thrumming, but now with a flicker of satisfaction. My house smelled like a mix of Susan's perfume and Mike's flop sweat, and my coffee table had a fresh scuff from Karen's flashlight. It wasn't just the mess, it was the nerve. She'd turned my sanctuary into her playground. And for what? Some delusional power trip? I leaned against the wall, letting the cops do their thing, when Travis pulled me aside. "You pressing charges, or letting the city handle it?" I thought for a sec. Karen's ego was already cracking like cheap plaster. "City first," I said. "I'll step in if she doubles down." He nodded. "Smart. She's got no idea who she's messing with." Outside, the neighborhood was a full-on spectacle. Mrs. Harper was live texting the chat. Karen's yelling at the cops now. Classic. Kids on bikes circled the block, whispering about the crazy lady who broke in. Mr. Jenkins offered me a beer through the fence. I waved it off, needed a clear head. Inside, Karen's defense was unraveling faster than a dollar store sweater. She tried showing Travis some crumpled HOA security clause printout, but he just handed it back. This isn't a badge, ma'am. It's paper. Sarah chimed in, deadpan. And breaking and entering isn't in your bylaws. As Rodriguez cuffed Mike. Not tight, just protocol. Karen's face twisted into a mask of rage and panic. This is harassment, she shrieked. You're all in on it. Travis didn't flinch. No, we're just doing our jobs. You should try it sometime. Susan started crying louder, muttering apologies I didn't care to hear. I glanced at my phone, camera still rolling, catching every glorious second. This wasn't just a win, it was a reckoning. Karen thought she ruled Pinewood, but she just kicked a hornet's nest. And me? I was the guy holding the stick. Karen's reign was crumbling faster than a stale cookie as Travis escorted her out of my house, her clipboard dangling like a fallen crown. It was 9:38 p.m., and Maple Drive was lit up like a reality TV set, cruiser lights strobing, neighbors gawking, and the air buzzing with whispers. Mike slunk into the back of Rodriguez's cruiser, ice pack on his nose, muttering, "This is so messed up." Susan sat on my porch steps, head in her hands, while Karen stood stiff as a mannequin, barking at Travis, "You'll hear from my lawyer." He didn't even glance back, just pointed her to Kim, who was taking her statement with the patience of a saint on sedatives. Down the street, Mrs. Harper was live-streaming the meltdown to the Pinewood group chat, her shaky camera catching Karen's every flail. She's still yelling, "Someone get this woman a muzzle," she typed, racking up 37 likes in under a minute. The chat exploded, folks I hadn't seen since the 4th of July picnic piling on with stories. She fined me $50 for a weird garden gnome, wrote Tom from Oak Lane. Tried to ban my kid's skateboard, called it a noise violation, added Rachel, the single mom on Birch. It was like someone flipped a switch. Karen's iron grip on Pinewood was slipping, and the pitchforks were out. Back at my place, I was sweeping up the mess, pliers on the floor, a scuffed wall from Mike's faceplant, and a drawer half open where Susan had pawed through my junk mail. My blood was still simmering, not from the break-in, but the audacity. This wasn't just my house, it was my peace, my fresh start after years of chaos training cops. And Karen had waltzed in like she owned it. Travis poked his head in, holding a notepad. "We're filing unlawful entry and possession of burglary tools. City's taking it from here. You sure you're good?" I nodded, jaw tight. "Yeah, just want her gone." He smirked. "Oh, she's going somewhere, probably not where she thinks." At the Raleigh PD station, Nate and Lisa were knee-deep in Karen's HOA dirt. Nate had pulled her emails, hundreds of them, sent to her task force, with subject lines like priority targets and safety protocols. One listed my house as high risk next to Mrs. Harper's too many visitors and Tom's questionable lawn art. Another had photos, blurry shots of my backyard drills, snapped from bushes like she was a suburban paparazzo. "This isn't just nosy," Lisa said, scrolling. "It's borderline stalking." Nate grinned, cracking his knuckles. "Let's see if she used HOA dues for those fancy patches. Then it's misappropriation too." Outside my window, the crowd was growing, kids on bikes, adults with coffee mugs, even Mr. Jenkins with a lawn chair like it was a tailgate party. Mrs. Harper shuffled over, wineglass in hand, and stage whispered, "Ethan, you're my hero. Karen's been a tyrant too long." I waved her off, half smiling. "Just cleaning up a mess, Mrs. H." She cackled, tottering back to her porch. Inside, I flipped through my camera app, every angle of Karen's raid, timestamped and saved. Evidence wasn't just power, it was a sledgehammer, and I was ready to swing. The next morning, the story hit warp speed. A local blog, Raleigh Rants, posted my footage, anonymous tip. My doing, under the headline, "HOA Queen or Home Invader?" Karen's task force bust into wrong house. By noon, it was trending on X, racking up 12,000 shares. Comments flooded in. "This is peak Karen energy," and "Someone get her a reality check, not a reality show." Back home, the Pinewood HOA board called an emergency Zoom, leaked link, naturally, and I tuned in from my couch, Max snoozing at my feet. Karen was on screen, hair frazzled, claiming it was all a misunderstanding and I'd invited her crew. The board wasn't buying it, not with my video playing in the background, her voice echoing, "Check the cabinets." One board member, Linda, a quiet florist who'd always dodged Karen's drama, snapped, "You dragged us into a legal nightmare over this. I'm out." She logged off. 2 others followed. Karen's internet froze, convenient timing, and the chat erupted with residents demanding her head. I leaned back, sipping coffee, feeling the tide turn. This wasn't just about me anymore. Pinewood was waking up, and Karen's throne was teetering on matchsticks. By evening, plainclothes investigators hit her doorstep. Nate's doing, I'd bet. She waved at them from her porch like it was a social call, but her smile was tighter than a drum. Word spread fast. Tom stopped by with a plate of cookies, grinning. Hershey's toast. Ethan, thanks, man. I shrugged. Team effort. But inside, I was buzzing. Karen didn't just mess with me, she'd messed with the wrong neighborhood. And we weren't done yet. Karen's front lawn looked like a ghost town by Wednesday morning, blinds shut, that tacky HOA chair sign missing from her mailbox, and her car collecting dew like she hadn't moved in days. It was 7:14 a.m., and I was on my porch with Max, sipping coffee that tasted sweeter knowing she was sweating bullets. The Pinewood group chat was still on fire, Mrs. Harper posting, investigators were at Karen's last night, spill the tea, with 52 replies in an hour. Tom chimed in. Heard she's lawyering up, good luck with that. I smirked, swirling my mug. Her empire wasn't just cracking, it was a pile of rubble, and we were all dancing on it. Across town, Nate was briefing the DA's office, slapping a stack of HOA docs on the table like a winning poker hand. She's got emails, photos, a whole surveillance operation, used dues to fund it, he told Anna, the assistant DA, who was skimming the task force binder Karen's crew left at my place. It was a goldmine. Notes on suspicious neighbors like Rachel leaves at 6 a.m. Why? And pics of my dog sniffing the yard like he was plotting something. Anna raised an eyebrow. This isn't just trespassing, it's harassment with a side of fraud. Nate grinned. Told you Ethan's mess would be fun. They greenlit a public hearing. Karen's day of reckoning was coming. Back in Pinewood, the neighborhood was buzzing like a beehive on espresso. By noon, a flyer hit every doorstep and signed, but I'd bet my shed it was Linda's doing. Emergency HOA vote, Sunday, 3 p.m., clubhouse. For our sanity, it read. Word spread fast. Rachel stopped by, skateboard in tow, grinning. We're kicking her out, right? I nodded. If I've got to say, yeah. She fist bumped me and rolled off, while Mr. Jenkins hollered from his yard, bring popcorn. I laughed, first time in days. This wasn't just my fight anymore. It was a full-on uprising. Sunday rolled around, and the clubhouse was packed, standing room only, air thick with tension and cheap coffee. I slipped in back, Max at home chewing a bone, as folks whispered and pointed. Karen strutted in at 3:05, late as usual, flanked by two teens in HOA recon polos, her last-ditch minions, probably bribed with pizza. She grabbed the mic, chin high, and launched into a speech that'd make a snake oil salesman blush. This was a training mix-up. Ethan invited us, and he's twisted it all, she claimed, voice shrill. I felt my jaw tighten. Invited her? I'd sooner invite a raccoon to dinner. The room shifted, eyes on me. I didn't yell. I just stepped up, handed Linda my flash drive, and let the footage roll. The projector hummed, and there was Karen, live and unfiltered. Check the cabinets, he's hiding something. Mike's wall crash got a laugh. Her cut the lock line drew gasps. She froze, smile stapled on, then stammered. That's not me, it's edited. Tom stood up, all 6 feet 2 inches of him, and deadpanned. Ran it through audio software, 100% real. You're done. The crowd murmured. Karen's teens edged toward the exit like rats off a ship. Linda took the mic, cool as steel. Motioned to remove Karen as HOA chair. Seconded in a heartbeat, Rachel's voice loudest. The vote was a landslide, 42-3, her pizza kids abstaining. Then Mr. Jenkins piped up, motioned to kill her task force permanently. Another wave of eyes. Karen clutched her clipboard, speechless, as the room turned on her like a tide. I leaned against the wall, feeling the weight lift, not just from me, but from Pinewood. She'd ruled through fear for too long, and now she was a punchline. Monday, she tried a Hail Mary press conference on her lawn, megaphone blaring to 3 confused neighbors and a stray cat. I'm a victim of bullying, she wailed, printer paper flapping on a music stand. I watched from my porch, Max at my feet, thoroughly entertained. Her voice cracked, the cat bolted. By Tuesday, the city dropped the hammer, formal investigation into her authority misuse and fund siphoning, fines pending. Neighbors threw an impromptu barbecue on the greenbelt. Rachel brought a piñata shaped like a whistle, and we smashed it to cheers. That night, one of Karen's teens, Josh, the lanky one, knocked on my door, shifting nervously. I didn't know it'd go this far, he mumbled. Thought it'd be cool, like security stuff. I eyed him, then softened. Want to learn it, right? His face lit up. For real. I nodded. Fix my gate first, your boss Bennett. He grinned, saluting. Redemption, one hinge at a time. Karen's house stayed dark, her rain toast, and Pinewood breathed easy for the first time in years. Karen's house went dark for good by Friday, curtains drawn tighter than a bank vault, her HOA sign yanked from the lawn like a bad memory. It was 6:32 p.m., and I was on my porch with Max, the sunset painting Maple Drive gold, when a moving truck rumbled past her place. No confirmation she was gone, but the neighborhood buzzed. Rachel texting the chat, saw boxes in her garage, Queen Karen's abdicating. Mrs. Harper replied, "Good riddance. My wine budget thanks you, Ethan." I chuckled, scratching Max's ears. Pinewood felt lighter, like we'd all shed a collective migraine. Across town, the city's hearing hit like a freight train. Tuesday, downtown Raleigh Civic Center was packed. Over 80 Pinewood folks RSVP'd, turning it into half courtroom, half block party. I took the stand, keeping it simple. Got an alert. Found her in my house. Here's the tape. The footage played Karen's "cut the lock" line echoing like a broken record. Her lawyer, a sweaty guy in a cheap suit, tried spinning it. She felt threatened by his drills. Linda stood up. "Dry as toast? You mean CPR training?" The room snickered. The gavel banged. Ruling came fast. Fines for trespassing, harassment, and fund misuse, plus a 10-year HOA ban and a mandatory ethics course. No jail, but her ego took a bigger hit than Mike's nose. Back home, the Greenbelt barbecue became legend. Tom grilling burgers, kids whacking that whistle piñata, and Mr. Jenkins passing out Pinewood Peacekeeper stickers like medals. I flipped a patty, Max begging at my feet, when Rachel rolled up. "You're the guy who stopped her," she said, grinning. I shrugged. "Just held the line, y'all finished it." She laughed, and we toasted with sodas. The air smelled like charcoal and freedom, no more clipboard tyrants lurking. Even Josh pitched in, fixing my gate with a hammer and a sheepish smile. "Thanks for not hating me," he mumbled. "Earn it," I said, tossing him a burger. He caught it, beaming. Karen's apology landed Wednesday, an envelope slipped under my door, typed by her lawyer with a robotic regret for unintended actions. But in the margin, her shaky scrawl, "I was wrong." I stared at it, coffee cooling in my hand, and felt the chapter close. Not smug, just done. She'd marched in thinking she was untouchable, but Pinewood proved her wrong. One video, one vote, one fed-up neighborhood at a time. The HOA board begged me to chair next, Linda cornering me with, "You'd fix this mess." I declined. "Not my circus," I said, "but I'll consult." They agreed. No badges, no patrols, just real safety plans. I met them Thursday, sketching out motion sensors and community watch ideas over coffee at Daisy's Diner. Linda nodded, scribbling notes. "No more Karens?" she asked. "Not on my watch," I grinned. We shook on it, and I walked out feeling lighter than I had in months. By Friday, life settled, kids biked past, Max chased squirrels, and neighbors waved like we'd survived a sitcom season together. Tom stopped by with a spare rib. "Heard she's selling, moving to Florida," he said. I laughed. "Godspeed to the alligators." He clapped my shoulder and left, the street quiet except for crickets. I sat back, iced tea sweating in my hand, and watched the stars pop out. Pinewood wasn't perfect, grass still grew too long, kids still skateboard too loud, but it was ours again, not hers. A week later, I ran a backyard session, Josh and a few ex-trainees brushing up on basics. He nailed a door sweep, grinning like he'd won the lottery. "Better than Karen's way?" I asked. "Way better," he said, and we laughed till Max barked for attention. That night, the chat pinged Mrs. Harper. First newsletter without Karen, bliss. I scrolled it, no fines, just a potluck invite. I RSVP'd, smiling. She'd broken in thinking she'd expose me, but I'd trained the real heroes, cops, neighbors, even Josh, and she'd never forget it. Leave a comment. Has Karen ever tried to run your life? Subscribe if you want to win arguments all the time.